This is the foundations phase. The foundations phase is a hugely important aspect of training. Whether you are very, very new to your workout program and you're just trying to build a firm foundation to grow on, right? Or if you've been training for a long time and what you're doing right now is either rehabilitating from an injury, preparing for injury prevention, or just deloading from your intense workload. The foundations phase of training is named, at least I believe, because of what Jesus had to say in the Gospels. He said, "A foolish man builds his house on sand. A wise man builds his house on a rock." And for you and your training program, I want you to be the wise man. The foundations phase allows us to have that firm rock to grow from. So the foundations phase lasts anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks. Depends on what you're really working on for your particular foundations phase. But the adaptations we're looking for are these. First, we're looking to develop a good mind-body connection. When we say, hey, drive your shoulders out of your ears and flex your lats, right? That requires a good mind-body connection. You need to know what it feels like to put your mind in a particular muscle and make it work. We want to use the right muscles in this phase. We also want to prevent injury and create a space for rehabilitation if necessary, right? Because in your training phases, things are going to go a lot better for you if we keep you from developing injuries by doing some pre-work now. A lot of people don't know this, but tendons and ligaments actually develop much more slowly than nerves and muscles. And what that means for people is that when they start a workout program, oftentimes their muscles and their nerves develop really quickly. They get strong fast. They see significant improvement quickly. But what happens is their ligaments and tendons don't adapt as quickly and they lag behind. And that's a problem because eventually what will happen is those things will get injured, hopefully not torn, but you could end up with one of the itises, tendinitis or fasciitis or any of the inflammatory words for tendons and ligaments, and we don't want that. So injury prevention and rehabilitation is a big part of the foundations phase. Similarly, we work on good movement patterns and balance and flexibility. So if you have muscles that are out of whack in the sense that their relationships are messed up, let's say your shoulders round forward because your chest muscles are very tight and your back muscles aren't as strong or as active, then we don't want you moving like that in later phases of training, especially under load. And so we work to improve some of those movement patterns here in the foundations phase. Also, we like to focus on using the right muscle groups. This goes back to that mind-body connection idea. So when we do a lat pull down in the foundations phase, we're focusing on not relying so much on our biceps, which are responsible for elbow flexion, but actually being able to use our lats, which is responsible for what's called shoulder depression. Not bad depression, good depression. These are elevated, these are depressed, right? So in the foundations phase, we work on that. And then we're also really emphasizing our core strength in this phase of training. And the way we do that is by purposeful movements. So in our exercises, we're doing 4 to 6 seconds per repetition. Again, in a lat pull down, that would be like 1, 2, 3, hold, 1, 2, 3, right? It's a very, very slow repetition, very, very mindful, very focused, very intentional, 4 to 6 seconds per rep. We're doing somewhere between 10 and 20 repetitions. Depends on how many repetitions you need in order to really feel that muscle work and how much focus you're able to give it, especially if you're not getting over any injuries. And then we're also taking very, very short rest periods, anywhere between 0 and 30 seconds. So if I was doing a lat pull down versus, let's say, a floor push-up, something along those lines, then I would knock out my lat pull down set. If I'm able, I would get down and go ahead and knock out my push-ups as well. Knock them out nice and slow with good focus on mind-body connection. Now, if you have particular questions about feedback in this phase of training, it's very, very important to get these movements right and to get cues in your mind that will help you move forward well. And I highly encourage you to take a video of your movement and just ask for some feedback. You can post it on Better Daily, you can send it to me individually, and what we'll do is make sure that you have a couple cues to move on while you're doing the movement and to put your mind in the right place. One of my favorites for something, again, I'll use the lat pull down as an example, is to squeeze through your pinkies, which sounds really weird, but it actually helps to activate a muscle that you wouldn't normally use very much. So a few focus items for this particular phase of training. One, breathing. This is an awesome opportunity for you to get your breathing right. If you don't breathe during your workouts, you're going to have a hard time supplying your body with oxygen, and you cannot burn fat as a fuel source without supplying your body with oxygen. And similarly, breathing muscles need to be developed well here too. A firm foundation requires that we're able to recover ourselves cardiovascularly in our workouts later, and so that we're breathing well during our workouts in the future. There are going to be harder workouts in the future, and breathing is a fundamental ability in order to up the ante on your intensity. Also, we're going to be looking at developing your cardiovascular base. Base training from a cardiovascular perspective makes you better at burning fat as a fuel source, right? But it also allows us to do some more intense stuff later, like high intensity interval training. One mistake people make in their training often is they don't take adequate time to grow their base, the solid foundation that we're talking about, and they jump right into those really high adaptive, high intensity exercises. And what happens is they get really good at burning carbohydrates as a fuel source and worse at burning fats as a fuel source. And I don't want that for you. I want you to be a very flexible metabolism, which allows you to consume carbohydrates and utilize them well, and to consume fats and utilize them well, while keeping your body fat optimal. So, very, very important there. Last but not least, from a nutrition perspective, in the foundations phase of training, it's a lower intensity phase of training. You do not need as many carbohydrates in this phase of training as some of the later phases of training, because we are not exercising as intensely. And so in this phase of training, I often recommend my clients keep their carbohydrate counts low for them compared to their normal training modalities like heavier weight training or high intensity phases of training. And this is an awesome opportunity to start counting your sugars and make sure it's within the parameters that make sense for your gender and your level of conditioning. If you have questions about that, again, you can reach out to me, especially in Better Daily, and I'll get right back with you about what those recommendations might look like for you. So, I challenge you in this foundations phase to be intentional, to improve your mind-body connection, and to stay focused through your workouts so that you can build a firm, solid foundation by which to build on top of for later phases of training. Guys, this has been Coach Alex Van Houten in Better Daily Live. Keep up the good work. And remember, it's just 1%. You got this.